Hello, everyone. I am recording out on a body of water by myself. I probably seem like an autistic person if anybody sees me. I'm going to try to remain lively in my discussion, despite the fact that what I'm doing is a little bit absurd. But, what can I say? I'm an innovator. I'm an innovative person. I'm on the vanguard of American social commentary, and so I'm very committed to this, and I'll even happily humiliate myself in front of many individuals if it means many more get to hear what I have to say. I've been reading a book. This is The History of My Life by Giacomo Casanova, the famous Casanova, the Womanizer Casanova. And I'm not going to relate to you every detail that occurs in the book. I tried doing something like that yesterday, and the video was like 41 minutes long, and it wasn't very good. It wasn't very entertaining because it was mostly me trying to struggle to remember the details and the place in which these events happen. So I'm just going to generally, inflect upon, take inspiration from some of the aspects of this book, because it's a fascinating story about an interesting individual. This guy had a eventful life, certainly by today's standards. The book starts from when he's young. This thing is split into like 12 volumes. The edition I'm looking at puts those 12 volumes across 6 books. I'm towards the end of volume 2. It's very long. It's a long work. It's about 4,000 pages in total, but I'm only finishing volume 2. And so by the end of this volume, he's like 20. And he bounces around all over the Mediterranean. He was the son of actors the son of an actor and an actress. His father died when he was young, and I think he was actually somebody in his family. Actually, I don't think it was him, but somebody after his family. If it wasn't him, it was somebody born right after him. Was born after his father had passed. I don't know if that it might have been a different father than for that individual, and possibly for Casanova as well. Either way, his mother was an actress who was in the private, worked for the court of the King of Poland, and so she had gotten a patrician family in Venice to look after Casanova, and so he was, while not technically a member of the patrician class, he was socialized into the nobility. Therefore, he had a certain degree of freedom of movement and was received into the company of different aristocrats around the area. And at one point, early on in his life, he even meets the Pope. And what's fascinating about him is, firstly, he was a freewheeling individual. He was quite bold, very much a strong individualist. There's something endearing about that. Very detailed in how he documents his personal relations with other people throughout his life. And as is known, Casanova was quite the cad. So there are plenty of risque details, intimate details of his dalliances with various individuals, men and women, mostly women. There's like there's one. I'm actually going to share this detail because it's so amusing. He's 19. He goes to Constantinople. Okay, he's been sent there by I think a cardinal, and he meets a bunch of people. But he meets this Turk who is has a harem, like concubines of 6 women. Which is common in the Ottoman Empire. And Casanova meets with him one time, and he puts kind of abstractly, the way he describes it is not very detailed, but he says one night when he's hanging out with this guy, the guy makes some moves on him. If I described this guy as an old man, I'm sorry, there was an old man who was a different Turk who he meets. I don't know the age of this individual. Certainly older than Casanova. I don't know if he was super old or anything, this individual Turkish man. But this guy makes moves on him. He's like weirded out by it. He refuses. The guy leaves it at that. And he's a bit bothered by it, Casanova. And Casanova speaks to a friend he made there, who was a Frenchman who had changed religions and had become kind of notorious in Europe for this. I think his name was Monsieur de Bonneval, something like that. And he's speaking about this encounter, and the Frenchman tells him, look, in this culture, that's not an unusual thing. This is something the Muslim men do. When a friendship is growing, if you said you were uncomfortable, then he'll respect that. It's nothing unusual. Anyways, he meets with this individual again. And there's some other details associated with this, but namely, there's a whole kind of side plot of Casanova falling in love with one of this guy's concubines, but it's unessential to the very interesting part, which is to say, one night he comes with the Turk invites him to a special spot in his garden, where he's like, if you come to this special place, you can see my concubines bathing, and we can watch them without anybody observing. And Casanova says, okay, I'll do that. So they go, and they're in the secret spot together, and they can see from a view 3 slave women bathing, and they can see a lot. Casanova suggests that maybe they knew they were being watched or something, because they certainly made a show. Anyways, Casanova becomes aroused, and he describes this as almost as though the Turk was planning on this happening. And so the Turk, because there's no women around, it's just him and Casanova in that little spot. The Turk is receives becomes the object of Casanova's lust, and he describes them both as taking turns with each other while they're watching the women. That's quite that's something else. And then he says afterwards they have a laugh about it, and then they drink coffee and eat preserves, and then Casanova goes about with the rest of his adventure. So these are I laugh at that because it's like he had this moment earlier in the story where he fell in love with a castrato, a male castrato, supposedly. Someone whom he is in disbelief is actually a male and is actually a woman in disguise. And I guess whether or not that's true, maybe you can understand some of the, by implication what the result is, but I won't explicitly tell you what the end of that inquiry, reveals. But there's a castrato whom he is in disbelief that this is a man. A castrato is a if you don't know, is a singer who has had his genitals removed at a young age, so that I think that prevents all kinds of hormones from affecting the body and the voice, so this person can sing at a higher pitch. This was something that was common in the Catholic Church for some time. It wasn't outlawed until the 19th century, either mid or late 19th century. I think late, actually. Because I think has gone viral of some video of a castrato from like the early 20th century, so it must have been late 19th. Anyways, I hope I got that detail right, or it was early 20th. Wow, how wrong I am on this. If it, I haven't studied this. You can tell. Anyways, that's what a castrato is. So a man without genitals. Now, Casanova meets this castrato who is very beautiful, and he's persuaded this is a woman. This is not a man. And he spends a lot of time wrestling with those feelings, because throughout the story he's been just hooking up with women left and right, conquering every woman that he meets, whether they be married, whether they be single, whether they be totally chaste people. And so he's like, oh my goodness, I don't think I'm disposed towards this sort of inclination. This must be a woman, or maybe I am. I don't know. And he spent some time grappling with that. It's kind of amusing that after that period, he just very quickly has this sort of absurd interaction with the Turk. But such is life. Anyways, that's one angle of the freewheeling aspect of Casanova. That's a bizarre one to fixate upon, but I'll throw it into the lot because it's true. So, gee, what a life he had. Now he does a lot more than fall in love with castratos and have a single instance of gay sex with a Turkish man. He does far more than that. he's on a path towards becoming a priest at one point. At one point, he speculates he's being set up for the papacy itself. Then he becomes like a sort of false officer. He pretends to be an officer. Then I think he pays for a rank in the military. Then he leaves and gets bored and becomes a fiddler. And he has so many romances, and each of them is quite interesting. Some of them are quickies, some of them are longies. But the oh my gosh, there's even times when he often gets in trouble. He gets arrested or he gets held in certain places, and then he escapes and he beats people up, or at one point he offends the sensibility of a general who was his supervisor, because the general is in belief that this defected French soldier is a nobleman, or a prince. And Casanova says, I know the genealogy of the Rochefoucauld family that this guy's pretending to be a part of, and there's no way his father is Francois V, because Francois V ruled at the beginning of the previous century. And the general says, how dare you doubt me? I believe him. And he gets angry, and Casanova beats up the false prince. And the army actually, funnily enough, shows up to his house after he does that, but they're kind of persuaded that this guy's faking it too. And they, instead of arresting him, they go, why didn't you kill the guy? He was faking being a prince. Anyways, Casanova gets a letter where he has to sign himself up for imprisonment on a large galley ship called the Bastarda, because he's offended the general. And rather than do that, he escapes. He gets in a boat and he paddles to a ship that takes him anywhere, just anywhere away from Corfu, the island of Corfu, which is where he is. And he winds up 20 miles away on a Greek peninsula. And he has no clue where he is. He meets an old man who asks him, "Are you a Greek?" And Casanova says, "No, I'm an Italian." The old man shuts the door and ignores him. And then Casanova goes and he has some money with him. He tries to buy some provisions. He buys a gun, and then he gets drunk and he figures, I'm going to go to that old man and I'm going to get housing for the night, whether he likes it or not. So he shows up to the old man, knocks on the door. The door opens. The old man, who's a Greek priest, an Orthodox priest, a padre, comes and sees him and goes, shuts the door immediately. Casanova knocks again, starts raising hell, starts cursing, screams, let me in, let me in. The padre does nothing. And then he takes the gun and he shoots one of the guy's sheep to intimidate him in the head. Let me in, let me in. And then the Greek padre starts ringing a bell, calling for help, sounding the alarm. All the peasants show up. They start forming a lynch mob. Casanova grabs these copper coins that he has. He has like a ton of copper coins. These are peasants. He's quite wealthy at that time because he actually was given a bunch of gifts by another Turk who he met in Constantinople, not the one whom he that with, but a different guy. And then Casanova later pawns all of these gifts and becomes quite wealthy. So he turns that into copper coins. So he's got these copper coins. So when the lynch mob comes, as the padre's ringing the bell, he throws the copper coins at them as a defense weapon. And the peasants are confounded by this. They find it so astonishing. Who is this young man, this teenager throwing these coins at us? Is he really so dangerous? They start liking him because he's giving them all this money. And then he tells the story to one of the peasants about why he shot the sheep in the head. He kind of shifts the story, says, well, I needed something to eat, so I killed it, and I'll pay back the value of the sheep. So he pays back the value. He looks around at this island, or this peninsula, this Greek peninsula, and he's like, there's a lot of strong young men here, and I've just, defected from the military almost, or at least I've abandoned my post. There's kind of confusion over what's happened to me. They might come back to reclaim me, to take me prisoner back to Corfu. So I'm going to need to raise an army. So he grabs these young Greek men and starts saying, hey, you want to join like my private army? And he asks one of the older peasants, do you want to be an officer for me? And he has the Greek women, these virgins who have already given their promised their hearts to these other men. He takes them on board as seamstresses and kind of we'll say doesn't have a fully platonic relationship with them, which is upsetting to the Greek padre. And the Greek padre announces that he's going to put a curse on Casanova. Casanova goes to visit the old man because he's unsure if the curse represents empty words or if it is a real threat. And he says, if I even get a fever, because of anything you've done, I'm going to blow your brains out at the first sign. And so the Greek guy kind of, is shocked by that. Later, it turns out the Greek guy finally informs the island of Corfu and the general there that Casanova is present, and he gets taken back, and they at this point he has to work out with the person who's been sent to him on behalf of the general. He has to work out the conditions of his return. So he comes back, and he's briefly imprisoned, but it's for like a day, and then he's let go. Anyways, these are the kind of funny things that happen. All right, so and all of this is happening before he's old enough to drink in the U.S. at least. We're the U.S. around at this time, and so and if the 21 year old what is it hurdle barrier were in place. All right, anyways, you know what I mean. So when you're a young person today, you don't really have those kinds of adventures. Some of them maybe you would like to avoid, just reflecting on some of the stories I've shared. But the freedom and the crazy stuff that happens to him is quite fascinating. So I strongly recommend the book. I broke my promise. I said I wasn't going to start relating details, but I did a little bit. There's a ton of stuff I left out. But it's just true, and with Casanova, the ability that he has that's so useful to him is that he's a good conversationalist, and he can ingratiate himself into every aristocratic clique he encounters throughout the Mediterranean. He can typically meet the power brokers, meet the big people, leave a mark, leave a favorable impression. The culture then was such that people would invite you to dinner. They'd say, not even like come to dinner once, but come to my house once a week, every week. And if you don't, I'll be brokenhearted. And so he'd do that, and he'd meet the literati of certain places. He was known as a gifted writer, a man of letters, and he has his ups and downs. Times where he is quite popular, quite beloved. Times when he becomes quite notorious, when he feels very alone. He has some loves come especially easily. Some take a ton of work and are quite more serious and less liberal. There's more reservation from the object of his love, and he becomes tormented by that. And you can tell it quite wounds him, and he even gets moody, and he kind of throws hissy fits from time to time. So it's a documentation of quite an intimate encounter of an individual in the 18th century. A Southern European, and I highly recommend the book. It's very much filled with life, but it does remind you, to enjoy life and make the most out of it, and let things happen, and don't be too, too skittish or finicky. Have some tolerance for life. Be forgiving, be charitable towards the things that can happen. But that's not really so realistic today without some cultivation and some effort, because I've made a lot of videos where I'm critical of mass society. Okay, I'm trying not to make too many videos where I just anathematize the entire human race. It's perhaps not productive. So I don't want to fixate on the things that make life, awkward, make it dull. Those things are out there, but maybe it's on me. Maybe it's on me to avoid the worst effect of those things, or the broadest, the most invasive influence of those things. Maybe it's on me. Maybe I shouldn't complain too much. But it's a reminder of the complexity of life and the opportunity for pleasures, for spectacles, for stories that are fascinating. And that's a good reminder. That's certainly different from the understanding of the world you'll get if you spend too much time on your cell phone. Which is, by the way, one reason why I've been able to make so much progress on this book. It's because rather than doom scrolling and things like that, I try to read stuff that really is as fascinating or more addictive than the stupid algorithms. And it's strange, because what can happen on the social media space or the internet world these days, especially, I don't know, I really mean these last few weeks, it's been very boring. There's no development in the main kind of things that are out there. The people they stay the same. The general sort of pundit, propagandist people always do the same thing that they've been doing for years. The news hasn't really changed much. Like, Iran is still going on, okay? Ukraine war is still going on. It's changed a little bit. There's more pressure now on Russia, it seems, in the narratives and stuff like that. Okay, China's like in this weird, are they rising? Are they gonna, cave in on themselves slightly? What's going on? It's just like nothing. And the same ideas that get thrown around, the same general like paranoia about, oh my God, what's going on in the world? And it's refreshing to get a reminder of like the depth of a life lived where none of this stuff had any influence at all. Certainly not 21st century news at this era, at this particular moment, this fraction of that century, certainly had no bearing over what was going on in 18th century in Casanova's life. So you get transported into a far more socially rich world, and that creates a huge disconnect between like passive culture today and where one's mind can be transported. So it's good to try to bridge the gap and reflect on it. And for me personally, as I've said, it's just a reminder to live life. Hopefully, I'm probably not going to go to Istanbul or Constantinople, and well, actually I might, but I won't be going there to experience what Casanova experienced. I'll say that much. It's not my taste, not my liking. But we'll see. Maybe somebody's got a harem, and I can't control myself. Uh-oh. All right, I'm gonna get canceled. I'm gonna get destroyed. I'm gonna get We should cancel Casanova. He does some things that are a little scandalous, to be frank. We can dig up his body and let him know he's in trouble. All right, now I sound like an idiot. That joke would have been funny like 6 years ago. All right. Anyways, I guess that's it. I should end the video. Peace out. Have fun.